Welcome to the Bridging Gaps podcast, presented by the University of North Texas System. Here are your hosts, Shannon Murray of Fox 4, along with Chancellor Lesa Roe and Paul Corliss of UNT System. Take it away, guys.
Welcome back to another episode of the Bridging Gaps podcast. I'm Shannon Murray from Fox 4, and joining me, University of North Texas System Chancellor Lesa Roe and Paul Corliss, the Chief Communications Officer for the UNT System. Paul, Lesa, what's up since we last talked?
Hey,
it's been great. We've had a board meeting, and then I took a vacation. So
where did you go?
I got to go to Turks and Caicos.
Oh my goodness,
and there was a proposal there. My son proposed to his girlfriend while there. So we got a wedding in the future.
And you knew ahead of time that this was happening?
Only I did. Me and my
is that right?
Were the only ones that knew. So it was pretty cool.
So what was the game plan? Where did he do it? How did it all?
On the beach, yeah. It was a facade of taking pictures, and he dropped and proposed. So it was
That's perfect.
It worked out really well.
So now you guys are planning a wedding.
Now we're planning a wedding. Well, I'm.
You're like I'm.
I'll do what I'm told, and it'll be a great time. So, and at the same time, we're getting ready. Classes are starting back. We got our health science center already started back, and our law school started back, and next week. All the rest. So it's a busy time again.
Yeah, I think move-in day at the dorms is this weekend. So all that fun.
Yeah.
Oh, was it this past weekend? Yeah,
so
nice and sweaty.
Acclimated this week, yeah. So
perfect. Yeah, what an exciting time. So tell us about your time out, because we've been so fascinated and fixated on your Instagram.
I know. Who do I think I am? I've been going to some really amazing places. We just got back from a 2-week vacation, so all over Europe. Mostly Italy and Spain. We were in Lake Maggiore, Lake Como, a brief visit to Switzerland, and then over to Ibiza and Mallorca, and then we flew out of Brussels. So we had a really good time. That's it. I know. All my friends kept commenting on social media, like, how is this still happening?
And how are you? Were you driving or training? How were you getting from place to place?
All of it. Mostly flying to, across, obviously from Italy to Spain. We took a plane, but we did take the train once while we were there when we went into Milan. But we did rent cars a couple of times, so was fun because we were able to get out of the main touristy areas and really explore too, especially on the islands.
So what were the highlights? Give us a.
Oh, I loved Lake Como. It was just beautiful and amazing. I had a great time there. I really liked Ibiza, which I did not think would be my favorite spot going into the trip, and I was pleasantly surprised.
And help me geographically, where in Spain?
So the island's right off of Spain. So a lot of people from Barcelona sort of hop over there because it's pretty close to that area. And Ibiza is definitely known for being like a party spot and a lot of EDM, electronic music, but it's also really beautiful. There are a ton of really cool beach areas where you can drive out and just relax, and it was gorgeous there. Mallorca was really pretty too. And then Brussels really surprised me because that was really just a pit stop on our trip, and it was just because we got a great flight deal out of there, and I loved Brussels. I wish I had more time there. It was a really cool city.
It looked like an incredible trip, and you guys definitely beat me since our last one at Turks
and
Caicos.
Check me out on Instagram, Shannon Joe. See, I can plug myself.
Yes, you will be impressed at what a fast lifestyle she lives.
Well, my boyfriend's really into his photography. He's got his GoPro and the drone and everything, so he took a lot of really cool pictures. So
fun.
My Instagram looked pretty good the last couple weeks.
It looked pretty awesome.
And now it's going to go back to normal. It's just work stuff.
Well, should we get into business?
Yeah, so speaking of, travel, our guest today, Dallas Regional Chamber President and CEO Dale Petroskey, has done a lot of travel in his career, especially when he worked on the Ronald Reagan administration, which is super interesting. So he has some really incredible stories. He even accompanied President Reagan to the Historic Geneva Summit in 1985, where the president and the Soviet General Secretary Mikhail Gorbachev worked to scale back the nuclear arms race that was fueled by the Cold War.
It's like an iconic moment of my childhood. I think I was about 10 years old and first starting to grasp current affairs when that was going on. That's fascinating.
Should I admit that I was not born yet?
Well, that's
happened.
Good for you.
I was born 2 years later, but sure. So, of course, today, Dale, though, is all about Dallas, and we're going to find out what's next for the largest city in North Texas, what new businesses are coming, are there game-changing real estate developments on the way, what is the Chamber doing to help sustain DFW's economic boom. I feel like working for the Chamber would just be like a really cool job.
Absolutely. Maybe they need a voiceover person.
Yeah, so let's take a quick break, and we will visit with Dale Petroskey of the Dallas Regional Chamber when we get back.
Together we.
Like the Tower Green to celebrate victory.
Together we
are building Dallas's emerging urban university.
Together we
are finding ways to fight Alzheimer's disease.
We are the University of North Texas, the UNT Health Science Center, and the University of North Texas at Dallas. Together we are the UNT system.
To learn more about the UNT system, visit untsystem.edu.
Welcome back to the Bridging Gaps podcast, presented by the University of North Texas System. Here are your hosts, Shannon Murray of Fox 4, along with Chancellor Lesa Roe and Paul Corliss of UNT System. Take it away, guys.
Welcome back to the Bridging Gaps podcast. Let's meet today's special guest. He is a key leader located right here in Dallas. We talked a little bit about his career before coming to Dallas to the regional chamber, but he was the White House spokesperson, president of the Baseball Hall of Fame, and of course, Dale was an executive vice president for our own Texas Rangers, so that's pretty cool. I'm sure it's been really a fascinating journey to arrive here at his current stop as president and CEO of the Dallas Regional Chamber. So let's welcome Dale Petroskey to Bridging Gaps.
Thank you, Shannon. Great to be with you and Lesa and Paul. Thank you.
Great to have you here with
Great
us.
to have you. Dale, I know business is first and foremost for the Chamber. So tell us about who has moved here, who's moving here, and who might move here and why.
Okay, great. Well, I like to say we get up in the morning here. Everybody gets up in the morning to get themselves ready. They go to the office, they pour a cup of coffee, they sit at their computer, and they say just another day. Mm-hmm. And they think that life is like this everywhere. I can tell you life is like this nowhere other than Dallas. Because in the last 8 years, 124 companies have moved their headquarters to Dallas. And in the last 8 years, we've created 800,000 new jobs in Dallas. It's the hottest market in the country, maybe the world. And so this is a great time to be in Dallas. And it just keeps on getting better because success begets success. And you probably read about Amazon. We were the chamber that kind of pulled that whole bid together. Mm-hmm. There were 240 or so submittals for Amazon headquarters, a second Amazon headquarters. We made it to the final 20. We think we're on the real short list now. And so I think that speaks to what a strong economy this is, what a strong place this is to do business.
I'm sorry, I was going to say, I know you're probably sworn to secrecy, but is there an expected timetable for that Amazon announcement, or are you not inclined to say?
Well, all they've told us and told the world is sometime in 2018. So we got a couple months to go.
Okay, yeah. We'll be waiting for that.
Yeah.
So tell us about the Regional Chamber and what you do and sort of what the Chamber's role is.
Okay. So the Dallas Regional Chamber is different than most chambers. There are 175 chambers in Dallas-Fort Worth, by the way. Wow. And we're the largest by far. Number 2 is half our size. And then everybody else is below that. And we're the only regional chamber, which means that we work on issues that go from Plano and Frisco to Richardson and Irving to downtown to southern Dallas, the whole swath of the community. And we work on 4 big issues, really. Economic development, bringing more companies and jobs to town, which I just talked about. Mm-hmm. Second, education to workforce. A lot of the issues that Lesa, we help Lesa in what she's doing in trying to get young people educated and then on to the next, on to their jobs and on to grad school and on to professional schools and so forth. The other thing we work on is talent attraction, because as a Toyota comes to town and says that they have 4,000 jobs coming to town, and 3,000 of those people actually move from California, but 1,000 don't, those 1,000 jobs have to be filled within the existing workforce. So they're cherry picking other companies to, hey, come work with us. And Toyota's a pretty attractive place to work. And so, other people are left having to replace those workers. So what we do is we try to let the world know Dallas is a pretty darn good place to work, and a great place to live and raise a family and build a life. And so I'll give you one example. Fossil, you all know Fossil.
Sure.
A great brand. I asked their CEO, do you have trouble recruiting for Fossil down here? And he says, no, not in our brand, but we do in terms of Dallas, because not enough people know what the personality of Dallas is. Young people know what San Francisco is, they know what Seattle is, they know what Denver is, they know what Boston is, but they really don't know much about Dallas.
Or even, Austin. I used to live in Austin, and when I moved from Austin to here, and I grew up here in Dallas, but so many people were like, why would you leave Austin? And it's like, well, the opportunity was so great, the job opportunity was, I couldn't pass it up.
Yeah, exactly.
And so, is that what do you tell people when they say that? What's your? I want to know. I'm going to steal.
Well, you're trying to get friends to move here.
Yes.
A couple things. One is we have the best economy in America. So if you want a job, you want a good job in your field, it's going to be here.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have a trailing spouse or you have a significant other who works in a different field, there's plenty of work for them too. We have a very diverse economy here.
Mm-hmm.
So if you work in banking and your spouse works in the healthcare field, plenty of jobs for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Second thing is the cost of living compared to those big cities is incredibly inexpensive. We're also we're a big league town. I mean, every major sport is here. Every big entertainer in the world comes through Dallas. Every big speaker comes through here, through the Bush Institute or other places.
There's always something to do.
It's a world-class town in every way, and you can afford to do it here.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of places, New York, a lot of things come through New York, but you can't afford to live there.
Right.
Right.
That's such a great way of putting it, that it's a world-class town and you can afford to do all those things and experience that lifestyle.
And you can afford not only to do the things that are happening at the time, you can afford to save for your kids' college. You can afford a house. You live in Los Angeles, you can't afford a house at the age of 35, and your kids are growing up, very tough to save for college. You can do it all here if you're managing your money properly.
A question for you just about the dynamics of our area, because I think one of the challenges that we face is that there's a lot of stuff spread out over a wide mile radius, right? We've got a lot going on in Fort Worth. We've got Arlington has the Rangers and the Cowboys. We've got everything here in downtown Dallas. Do you guys think about ways to make that smaller and easier for people to access? Because I think of that as one of the challenges we have, is that we are a little bit spread out as opposed to some other cities like a Chicago or a New York or a Boston where things are a little more centralized. So how do you work with other chambers or other groups to try to make things smaller?
So I would say, Paul, that is an advantage, not a disadvantage.
Okay.
From this standpoint, we have plenty of room to grow. We're growing like crazy, 1 million new people here in the last 8 years. But it could go on forever. We're flat. There's a lot of land out there. There's no ocean to restrict us. There are no mountains to restrict us. And so I think that helps our growth. The other thing is it gives us diversity. So if you're a company and you want to be on a campus, you can go up to Plano or Frisco. You want to be in the tech corridor, you'll go to Richardson. You want to be near the airport, you're going to go to Irving. So there's plenty for everybody here. And then if you like more of the Western style of life, you might want to go over to Fort Worth. You want to be near the airport, you go to Arlington. So I think it's a strength, not a weakness.
Yeah, and maybe that contributes to some of the affordability you talked about, because we do have other land to expand into as opposed to being wedged up against a mountain and an ocean.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of young people love to live downtown and uptown, or like Elizabeth, they like to live on Main Street. But other people like to go out to Parker. They want a little land, and you can have both. You can have either, I should say.
Well, how can partners like the University of North Texas system, how can we be better partners with the chamber and help to shape the future of Dallas and Dallas-Fort Worth?
I don't know how you could be a better partner, really.
Nice.
No, you guys have been fantastic, Lesa, and not only that, you're a great bridge to us in many communities. You're a great bridge up in Denton to us, in southern Dallas, over in Fort Worth at the medical school. And so there's a lot of ways that your footprint is really advantageous to us, I think.
Yeah, I guess like you said, there's every kind of job here, and we're producing every kind of job with the workforce that
Absolutely.
that are coming out of our universities.
I can't tell you the number of people I've met or that are on our staff, or when I was with the Rangers, that UNT grads, and they're hardworking, and they take nothing for granted, and they want to do a good job. So,
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Wonderful news.
So talk to us about the Rangers a little bit, though, because I know Paul probably wants to talk about that too.
I always have my
He's
sports
holding
things I have to
back.
come in with.
He always works sports into the conversation, like no matter
Sports
who we're
in my band,
interviewing,
right,
but
Shannon?
you actually have a legitimate peg. Did they ever consider Dallas as home seriously, or was that a discussion?
well, that was a long time before I got there. It
Yeah.
was in the 80s and 90s,
Oh,
and
okay.
so I think what a lot of people forget. And this is true of the Cowboys as well. And I know that this does not make me popular with some of my Dallas friends, or maybe I shouldn't even be saying this as the president of the Dallas Regional Chamber, but if you're sitting in the seat of an owner of the Rangers or the Cowboys, and you've got the 9th largest city on one side, Dallas, and you've got the 15th largest city on the other side, Fort Worth, you'd be a little bit weighted to one side if you went one way or the other.
Sure.
Why not be in the middle, where the people from that 9th largest city can come easily, and the people from the 15th largest city can come easily?
Right, but I live in Dallas. So I live in-
I think it was a good call, and they got great land out there, and the people of
yeah.
Arlington have really.
Well, there's so much happening there now too.
Yeah,
It's-
Texas
I was
Live.
curious what
Huge.
you think about that Texas Live development and all
Yeah,
the,
it's cool.
I guess, repurposing of the current stadium as we
I'm
have a new one.
I'm sad to see the current stadium go. I
Yeah.
love the stadium, and it is so it feels brand new. It's 25 years old, but it feels brand new. And I just don't know why we need a new stadium, to be honest with you, except on those 103-degree days in August when nobody wants to come out to the ballpark.
This has been a tough summer to go see the Rangers,
Yeah.
just based on it being such a hot summer.
Yeah.
It will be nice to have that opportunity, like they do in Houston or Phoenix, to
Right.
take in a game and also catch some cold air.
I think really, Paul, what happened is when they built the stadium, it was right after the Orioles built Camden Yards. And it was on the new end of all the new stadiums being built. They were one of the first, of the retro stadiums being built.
Right. It's like them in Cleveland about right after Baltimore.
So they built this 50,000 seat stadium when everybody else started building 38,000 seat stadiums. And a smaller stadium was easier to put a dome on. You couldn't put a dome on a 50,000 seat stadium. I think they probably kicked themselves about 5 years after they built it, saying, "What have we done?"
Makes sense.
I think everybody now wishes they had a dome on it because they'd keep the current stadium. But I think it does hinder people going out there in July and August.
Yeah, it's exciting to see that all coming together.
It is, sure is.
So, in your past in the White House too, I'm curious what you think now when you watch those White House press briefings, or I don't know, do you watch? We don't have to get too political here, but do you miss it? Do you reminisce? Or you're like, oh, I'm glad I'm moved on to other things now.
I don't miss it these days. No,
Yeah.
no.
Yeah.
I have a lot of friends from those days still. Both staff members that I was very close to, but also press members that I've remained close to.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of hard to believe what's going on right now and how the press is being torn apart and torn down. And I just have a hard time with that, because I believe the press plays a very important function in our society. I was a journalism major in school. I believe in good journalism. I believe in checking facts. I believe in the truth, and I trust the media for the most part. And although I will say, I think that with social media being what it is, and there are less editors these days and less fact checkers these days, it does pose a problem. And I don't know how we fix it and put editors on everything.
Right. It's a different time from when you were in the White House. A lot of other obstacles.
Very different. And we respected the press. And, we didn't always see eye to eye with the press. President Reagan didn't. But we respected them, and we understood the important role that they played.
Do you have any favorite memories from that historic Geneva Summit that you share?
The Geneva one was interesting. That was the first one. I have more memories from the second one, which is in Reykjavik, Iceland. And the president went over there. He had met with Gorbachev in November of 1985. That was the first time an American president had met with a Soviet leader in 30 years. So it was a really big deal. And we knew it was big, but we didn't know it was about to change the world. And the president, I'll have one memory for Geneva and one for Reykjavik, but the first memory I have of Geneva is that the president was a generation older than Gorbachev. He was 75, Gorbachev was 52 at the time. He could have been his son. And so there are a lot of American folks and a lot of the staff were worried that Gorbachev would look young next to the old, doddering American president. And so there's a flip of a coin as to who would greet who the first day. And so the president won the flip, and he was the one waiting at Hofty House for Gorbachev to arrive. And of course, every camera in the world seemed to be there to capture the moment. Well, at the last moment, it was a cold day, it was November in Geneva, and the president decided not to wear his top coat. And one of his aides, Jim Kuhn, encouraged him to not wear it, just to tough it out for a few minutes, because he would look a little bit old in a top coat. So he strode down the steps at Hofty House, and the Russian ZIL limousine pulled up, and out stepped Gorbachev in a top coat and a hat and a scarf, looking like the old man.
Yeah.
And Ronald Reagan
cool.
was 6'2", standing there, looking like $1 million.
Yeah.
And it was Gorbachev that really looked like the old man compared to Ronald
fascinating.
Reagan. And it was all stagecraft, right?
Yeah.
It was all
Oh, yeah.
about staging the moment. And that was a great start to the summit. And I think people put aside any reservations they had about Ronald Reagan at that moment. The second, that they met and laid a lot of foundation for the second summit, which was in Reykjavik a year later in October of '86. And they came very, very close to agreeing on a deal to get rid of all mid-range nuclear weapons. And at the end, Gorbachev threw a little monkey wrench into the negotiations because he wanted President Reagan to give up SDI, which is our Strategic Defense Initiative. And just to make it real simple, it was like a defense shield.
That was what we called Star Wars back then?
Yeah, the Soviets would shoot a missile, that this shield would knock it down and it couldn't penetrate the United States. Mm-hmm. And so, and it was just in testing stages, it really wasn't up and operational, but the Soviets were so scared of that it would give the Americans an advantage, that he used it, said, you've got to get rid of SDI, Mr. President, before we're going to ink a deal. And President Reagan said, I'm not doing that. I believe in SDI. And I'll never forget the look on his face when he left the meeting and he got into his limousine on the way back to Air Force One. He had the look of a very sad, sort of defeated man, like, oh my gosh. And then, but he was right. And he stuck to his principles, and he was right, because a couple of years later, the Soviet Union came crashing down.
Right.
And he'd won. He'd won without a single bullet being fired. And he just stuck to his principles, and it was a great moment, but we didn't know so at the time.
But when that comes to a head, a point in negotiations that's halt things, how many advisors are involved in that decision that the president makes? How much is it him and how much is it other folks advising him?
The one thing about Ronald Reagan is before he got to the presidency, I should say, he had about 30 years in public life, and he knew exactly what he believed about a couple things, and that was one. He was very, very strong in his belief that the Soviet system, a communist system, was wrong for human beings, and a wrong way to run a country, because it just took humanity out of things. And so he really believed that he wanted to defeat communism. That was his belief. So that was one that was really easy for his advisors to know where he was going to come down on. But it comes down to Secretary of State, and at that time was George Shultz, and the National Security Advisor, and at that time was Bud McFarlane. And so, there's just a couple people that really are advising him at that point, but they were all in alignment.
Everybody was on the same page.
Yep.
Got it.
Well, what a life you've lived. You've done a lot of cool stuff.
This is the best job of all, though.
Really?
Oh,
what makes you say that? Why do you say that?
Because
you have to say that?
No, because I get to be in a region that is I mean, this is like a moment in time. Mm-hmm. This doesn't come along very often.
Right.
And to work with business leaders and university leaders to make it better every day, and for it to be small enough. It's not the whole country, okay? So it's small enough that it's a region, that you can actually have an impact on it and be in the middle of everything. And lock arms with Lesa and other university presidents.
I'm not paying him anything at all.
But in business leaders and get to work on cool stuff with Elizabeth, educational issues and economic development issues and talent issues and public policy issues. It's almost like my whole life has been a dress rehearsal for this. And I feel like I've landed in a great spot probably at the end of my career.
Okay, for our listeners, who is Elizabeth? Because we've mentioned her a couple times.
Yeah. Elizabeth Caudell is our education specialist who works on university and college issues for us, higher education.
She's here in the room hanging out too.
She also lives in our apartment building that the UNT system actually owns that's adjacent to this studio, so she's right at home today.
And she is really excited for the TCU Horned Frogs football season coming up.
Wait, now we do. Now, I am a TCU alum, so I'm also excited, but we do have UNT hosting SMU coming up here on September 15th.
Yes, we do.
The mean green's gonna show it to the ponies, maybe.
Well, we're not done talking to Dale, but we are going to take a quick break, and we will be right back. But before we do that, Dale, tell us how our listeners can follow you on social media.
You can follow us on Twitter at DR Chamber, so DR capital C, so Dear Chamber on Twitter.
Okay.
And on Facebook.
Cool, great. We'll be right back. You're listening to Bridging Gaps.
The University of North Texas system is the only university system based in Dallas-Fort Worth, the nation's #1 job market. Our robust system is focused on providing work-ready graduates to our booming region while uplifting the lives of our students through education. Between our 3 institutions, the UNT system awards more than 9,000 degrees each year, including the largest number of master's and doctoral degrees in the DFW region. To learn more, visit us at untsystem.edu. Welcome back to the Bridging Gaps podcast, presented by the University of North Texas System. Here are your hosts, Shannon of Fox 4 and Chancellor Lesa Roe.
Welcome back, and thank you, Dale, for being here again. We're so happy to have you. It's been a really interesting conversation, especially talking about all the many careers and you've had and things you've done, and it's just really fascinating.
Yeah, I think probably the longest part of your time in your career has been at National Geographic, and I remember wanting to work for National Geographic. So tell us about that time.
Well, you worked at a pretty good place too.
Not too shabby.
NASA's not bad, right?
Yeah.
And we had a lot of ties between NASA and National Geographic in those days too. I was very lucky to work at National Geographic for 12 years, and I got there the year that we turned 100. It was 1988. And I had the great pleasure of, I went there as the Vice President of Public Affairs. And then I got tapped pretty early on to sort of be the Chief of Staff to the CEO. And his name is Gil Grosvenor. And his family had run National Geographic since the beginning, since day one. He is the great-grandson of Alexander Graham Bell. And so Bell, it's an interesting story. Do we have time?
Absolutely.
Okay, so
yes.
So in 1888, the Geographic was founded by a guy named Gardner Green Hubbard. And Hubbard died, and Hubbard's daughter-in-law was, Alexander Graham Bell was the son-in-law of Gardner Green Hubbard. Well, he was a pretty busy guy, Alexander Graham Bell. A few years earlier had invented the telephone. He was trying to invent the airplane at that time, and he came within a whisker of beating out the Wright brothers as the inventor of the airplane. Bell did. Wow. So he was working on all this stuff at this time. But Hubbard's family said, Alex, can you keep this little journal going? It was like 1,000 subscribers to National Geographic. It was a little pamphlet that went out to scientists in the Washington area. So Bell took it over, but as soon as he had a son-in-law, he said, I'm out of here. I'm going to turn this over to you, Gilbert Hubby Grosvenor. So he did. He turned it over to a 23-year-old school teacher from Amherst who had married his daughter. And Gilbert Hubby Grosvenor ran it from 1901 to 1956, 55 years, and took it from 1,000 circulation to 2 million.
Wow.
Oh,
and then Melville Bell Grosvenor ran it from 56 to 1980 and took it from 2 2 million to 6 million. And then my boss, Gilbert Melville Grosvenor, took it from 6 million to 11 million while I worked for him. And so I got to work with Gil, and it was a fascinating job. I like to say it was like being in grad school every day. A lot of stuff that I wasn't paying attention to when I was actually in school, I was now learning, whether it was about the natural world or the physical world or the cultural world or the political world. And it was like being in a seminar every single day. Or photographers would come back from, Mongolia, and you sit down and have lunch with them, and they would show you their pictures, and they would tell the stories, and you felt like you'd been somewhere with them, It was a fascinating place. And the other part of it was interesting is that there's a lot of Washington that's very transient, in that political people come into town and then they leave, and others come into town and then they leave. Geographic in some ways, which is 4 blocks north of the White House on 16th Street, is really a permanent establishment in Washington. And so it's sort of where the permanence of Washington comes in. So I got to know a lot of the people who were old line Washington families and people like that a lot of my political friends and from my previous life never got a chance to do. So that was a really great experience for me, and really was one of the greatest experiences of my life.
How many years were you there?
12.
12 years.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
And actually, it's kind of an interesting story. When the day I got the call from the Baseball Hall of Fame, I got a call saying there's a job you need to have, and I said, I've already got the job I need to have. I love my job. I was in the top 5 at National Geographic. I was the youngest of the top 5. I had a chance to be president of National Geographic one day, and that was my dream. And then the Baseball Hall of Fame came calling, and I just couldn't turn it down.
Now you have me excited to talk about the Baseball Hall of Fame. So, Cooperstown, right? I mean, what an amazing place. Just for our listeners, tell them, not everybody's a baseball fan, what that means.
Cooperstown is a tiny little village of 2,300 people. Think about that, 2,300 people in Cooperstown. Wow. It's this beautiful town on this lake called Lake Otsego in the middle of upstate New York. And it's named Cooperstown after James Fenimore Cooper. His family was the founding family of the town. And James Fenimore Cooper in his day was the John Grisham of his day. He was the best-selling author in America. And so it's all built around, James Fenimore Cooper in Cooperstown. But the Hall of Fame started there in 1936. And to get to the Hall of Fame, and I think this is your question, Paul, how hard is it for a player to get there?
Right. I mean, it's the hardest Hall of Fame to get into. I know of.
So I'll give you a real simple math equation to kind of set it up. This year, 3 million kids are playing Little League, and of those 3 million, someday 45 will make it to the major leagues. Of those 3 million, 45 kids. Okay. Of those 45 kids of that class that go to Cooperstown, 1% will make it to the Hall of Fame. 1 out of 100 major league players will someday make it to the Hall of Fame. So if you've got a game's worth of players, 25 in one dugout and 25 in the other dugout, that's 50. You need another game's worth of players to find one Hall of Famer.
Right.
So every night when you're watching a game, you're probably not watching a Hall of Famer on that field.
And your years you were there were what years?
1999 to 2008.
So what was your? Who were the most high-powered classes of Hall of Famers that came in? What were some memories there of guys coming in?
My first week on the job was Nolan Ryan, George Brett, Orlando Cepeda, and Robin Yount.
Pretty strong first week on the job.
Then my last year was Cal Ripken and Tony Gwynn.
Cool.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
Yeah, it was fun. But I was also there during the steroid era, so there was a lot of controversy. I was there in Congress when Rafael Palmeiro and McGuire testified, and I was down with the commissioner and others. So anyway, it was an interesting time to be there.
Well, we started out this podcast talking about travel. I know you had some great travel this summer with the Chamber, so can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so we take 2 trips a year with the Chamber, international trips, and we go with Mayor Rawlings and Mayor Price of Fort Worth, and then our Chamber and the Fort Worth Chamber and our Visit Dallas group, Convention Visitors Bureau, and Fort Worth as well. So it's a combined Dallas-Fort Worth trip. And we go out and we talk about this great community and and try to let people know it's a great place to locate a company or to come visit. And we really tell the story. So we went to London, Paris, and Brussels, and then we went over to Albania, where our daughter's boyfriend is from, and he showed us the country. It's a absolutely beautiful country in terms of natural beauty, but was under communism for many years. So there's the ravages of that in some areas as well. But he proposed to our daughter.
Whoa, we got two proposals in one podcast.
We're really bringing it full circle here.
But Lisa's got the easy job. We're the ones that actually have to plan the wedding.
Oh, that's right.
Lisa gets to enjoy
That's
it.
right, yeah. Well, congratulations.
Congratulations.
To your family. That's
Thank you.
really exciting. And what a cool proposal.
Yeah. It was in a 3,000-year-old site, a World Heritage site called Butrint, right on the Greek border in the southern part of the country. And he just kind of, we were all touring it and we kind of knew what was going on, so we skedaddled out of the way and he made the proposal. That was good.
That's really cool. So what's next for the chamber? What's on the list? What's the future look like?
Well, we're waiting to hear from Amazon this year. That's a big, that'll be a big moment, one way or the other. And even if we don't get Amazon, there are a lot of companies that are hovering, waiting to see what Amazon does. And if Amazon doesn't come here, we're going to get a lot of those companies anyway. If Amazon does come here, they probably won't come here. So that's it. But we continue to work on education issues and talent issues, and we got the legislature coming up next year too. So that's occupying a lot of our time right now.
It was really great to have you on the show today.
Thank you.
Sure was.
Thanks,
Really
Shannon.
fascinating. I feel like you just need your own podcast.
Like the most interesting man in the world, right?
Seriously, you have just stories for days. So we thank you for coming on. This has been really great.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure.
Awesome. Well, Lesa and Paul, good luck with the start of classes next week. Good luck to the Mean Green against the Ponies on September 1st. And thank you to the UNT system for supporting the Bridging Gaps podcast. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at Chancellor Roe, at Paul Corliss, and at Shannon M. Fox 4. Send us your questions, your comments, guest ideas. We really would love to hear from you. Bridging Gaps is a monthly podcast, and you can find us in a number of places, including DallasInnovates.com and iTunes. Until next month, I'm Shannon Murray for Lesa Roe, Paul Corliss, and our guest, Dale Petroskey of the Dallas Regional Chamber. Thank you for listening. See you next time.